Let's play a game. Hello, I don't know if that's said in this movie or not, but whatever. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you to review, just when you thought it was over with Saw the Final Chapter, or Saw 3D, I think as it was titled in the theaters. I don't know how many years after Saw the Final Chapter Jigsaw came out, but I know I, for one, was definitely surprised to see this trailer arrive on YouTube back in, was it 2017 when this movie came out? And I did actually back then, I did review the trailer, and I had kind of toyed with the idea of seeing this in the theater just for fun, having never seen a Saw movie in the theater. And of course October, I'm pretty sure this came out in October of 2017. Of course October came and went and I never saw it. I mean, I'm not going to go see a Saw movie in the theater, let's be realistic here. But I did end up buying it like last Black Friday. I think I want to say it was like $5.99 on Amazon. Free shipping, so I'm just like, oh well, shit, I'll blind buy this for $6 on Blu-ray, and I did, and I don't know, I guess because it's October, like with a Saw month, I kind of feel like, well, let's just rewatch it, and we'll review it. We'll review Jigsaw during the Saw month, so that's what I'm doing. I'm coming at you to review Jigsaw, the most recent Saw movie from, I'm pretty sure, 2017. And, unlike all the other Saw movies, I wasn't too thrilled with the aspect ratio. I know it's kind of a goofy complaint to start off the bat with, but I'm not a big fan of this aspect ratio in general, and particularly when all the other, was it 7 Saw movies? I don't even know, I think so. Were all the kind of more like the 1:8:5. This one you've got at the 2:40 ratio, and it's just like, oh man, that's just like, not crazy about the aspect ratio. But I do like the overall, some of the, like the early Saw, maybe the first, I don't know, first half of the Saw movies were during that era where everything was like color time green and all that crap. So one thing I do like about the look of this movie is it plays more or less like just a normal looking movie and normal coloring and stuff, and doesn't have that green crappy look to it, which is kind of cool. So those are some things. Obviously, some things that are good about it. Obviously, just like with the, well, actually no, well, the last Saw movie was, I think, the only one of those shot digitally, because it was 3D. It was actually shot 3D versus post converted. So I would imagine that the last Saw movie, Saw Final Chapter, is the first one to be shot digitally. Of course, now pretty much everything is shot digitally, so this also was shot digitally. But whatever. I think it's one of the, it's not a horrible looking digitally shot movie. I guess it works. Yeah, this one, I don't know if I'm necessarily, mostly because I can't necessarily, I don't know. I don't know. The ending is, I remember being like, oh, I don't know if I can really remember so much of what unfolds at the ending as far as the reveal of stuff, so I don't know if I'm really going to spoil that or not so much. Yeah, I'll just simply say that, for a Saw movie, it was, one thing that was cool about this, I guess the main thing I should mention about this movie was, obviously, I think at the end of like the third one, the actual character of Jigsaw died, I think, or was killed or whatever. So we never, we heard his voice for the rest of the series, but I don't think we ever really, well, we might have seen him in flashbacks and stuff, but as far as actually like being the perpetrator of things and actually monkeying with, or not traps, but whatever you want to call it, I guess you can call them traps, or, deadly devices and all this kind of stuff. So one thing that's cool about this movie, and I think me and probably so many of most of the viewers that watched this movie were kind of confused by, is that it's like he's back, like the John Kramer or whatever, is that his name of the character, is back, and we see him doing things in this movie, and we see him, which is, I don't know if he was revealed like halfway through the movie or whatever, and it's just like when he's revealed, it's so funny because I'm not even a Saw fan, and when he's revealed in this movie, I'm like, oh yeah. It's like I don't even like these movies, but I think I mentioned that in my review of the trailer 2 years ago, is that it's something about, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Like, you can have a franchise that you completely and totally loathe, like the Saw franchise, and it's like, I don't know when the 3D came out, was it 2010 or something like that, the Final Chapter, and then all of a sudden, like 7 years later, you can do another one, and it's just like, just because 7 years has gone by without a new movie, it's like I found myself being like, oh, it's so old now that or it's all so old now where I can actually, there's something, a fondness about the idea of another Saw movie, even though I never liked these movies, and it's just really freaking weird. So when, that's one thing that's kind of cool about this movie is for the first time since the third one, John Kramer is kind of back and doing things. And I gotta admit, the way it's because it's a Saw movie and it doesn't matter, I was watching it and just not even, I wasn't getting all upset, like, how can he be back and all this stuff. A lot of people might get all upset, like, that's such a cheat, how is he back and all this stuff. And of course it's explained at the end, and maybe I'll just simply leave it at that, instead of spoiling how it's explained at the end, maybe I'll simply say that it's explained in a way that, is not a cheat. Because at first I was like, well, if he's back and if he's not dead, or if it's his twin brother or some kind of crap, it's just what a freaking dumb, stupid cheat it is. And I will say, without spoiling it, maybe how he's back at the end when it's all revealed how he's back, it's kind of like, oh wow, well that actually makes sense. And one little spoiler, if I may add something, which doesn't make sense, is he shouldn't look quite so old as he does in this movie. That's the one complaint to the their little way of bringing him back for this movie. He's looks probably 10 years older than he should look. We'll just say that. But with that. Out of the way or not being said or whatever, it's without that, appearance of him looking older than he should, the gimmick that they do to have him come back was, you can't really argue with it. It was a pretty clever gimmick. So after 7 years, does this feel like a Saw movie? Absolutely. And I guess it's funny because for me, not being necessarily a fan of Saw movies, I will say that it feels like a Saw movie in I don't know why this is so difficult to say. Like, everything I didn't like about the Saw movies, this feels exactly the same. We'll just say that. We'll just leave it that way, where you've got a whole, what is it, like 4 or 5 brand new, absolutely generic, killable characters in, a setting that I actually, because so many of the Saw movies take place in dirty, gritty, grimy bathrooms or shit-filled bathrooms or all kinds of dirty, gritty, grimy places. Like, this is like the first time I can remember this one actually takes place out in the country in a farm, like in a barn or something like that. So this is actually kind of probably my favorite location from a Saw movie that I can remember, where it actually takes place in an environment that I actually like. And I gotta admit, for the first like 3, I don't know if it's like 2 or 3 like little test, I don't know what you call them, a true Saw fan would know. You call it like a test area or a trap/test area. It's kind of cool how they have like these chains around their necks, and the first thing brings them up against, they've got to prick their, I don't know, whatever, to give the device some of their blood to get out of the, to make it through the door, versus being completely sawed up by these saws on the wall. And then they'll be pulled through that if they pass it, and then the chain is still on their necks. And then there's this one point where this, I think the second room, there's like a wheel that disengages, so the chain is now like gonna hang them if they don't pass the next test or whatever. And so that bit towards the first, couple phases of the tests or whatever, with the chain pulling them this way, and then now it's going to hang them. I mean, I thought that was kind of cool. And of course, like, the third test is they got to do something to not be hung or whatever. So I will say, like, the Saw-ish traps, I mean, it feels exactly like the first 7 movies, so a true Saw fan shouldn't be disappointed by that. And another thing that feels exactly like the first 7 movies is the absolutely just annoying and generic kind of, this movie's also, it cuts back and forth between these victims and the trap/game situation at the barn, and, this cop. I don't know how these Saw movies, always end up finding such just like boring, generic characters to play these cops, and this guy who's like a coroner guy, and his assistant, and it's just like, oh my god, it's absolutely, it's like no time has passed. And it's just, Saw 8, came a year after Saw 7, and I guess I'm saying this, it's a compliment to fans of the movie, and then it's a what's the opposite of a compliment? A criticism to people like me who aren't really necessarily fans of this franchise. But, you know, I can't say that I absolutely hate it like I used to. I mean, there's things about it that, you know, like John Kramer, I mean, you got to agree with him, you know, you got to agree with the character. And one thing I will say about this movie versus some of the other ones, and actually I think this is the first one on home video that has not, or at least not yet, been available in an unrated version. I think all the first 7 movies have unrated versions, where this one, like I said, at least not yet, from what I know, has unrated version. That's a compliment that I'm going to give it. Is like, so with so many of the first movies, like maybe 3 and 4 and stuff, I can't remember which one's just the most nasty or whatever, but they get so what I would regard as just overly nasty and gross, whereas this one I found had a really perfect balance for me of, you know, gore without necessarily getting too nasty. I mean, I guess some of the stuff I didn't like about the previous entries, and I talked about it, and, you know, we did a video back in the day where we just did a Saw franchise review, so we reviewed all the movies in one video. And I was talking about, there was this, it might have been 3, where the, like, just, you know, the pig intestines and the pig slop and all this just kind of, although you know that's not what it is, it's still nasty looking slop and whatever. So this movie I did think, and I kind of like the fact that, you know, so far it's not available in an unrated version, because I really felt like for a Saw movie it really found the perfect balance of gore. Like, definitely ample enough gore, but not, I didn't really feel like it pushed it past where I was comfortable with it. Of course, that's going to vary between individuals and, you know, different viewers and stuff, but for me, you know, I just felt like it was like a perfect amount of gore, and really didn't go too far. So I kind of appreciated that. So throughout the course of the movie, because I don't really like the generic police guys or detective guy and the generic coroner guy, I found myself kind of rolling my eyes every time he cut back to them. But then, you know, every time they cut from that boring stuff back to the barn, I'm like, yay. And one thing I will complain about is that kind of sexy blonde chick with the pretty nice legs and those like fishnet stockings or whatever. I was really kind of disappointed that she died so quick, because I was kind of looking at her legs. So gosh darn it, I wanted to tell the director or the writers, I'm like, excuse me, I was looking at her legs, and you go ahead and then you killed her, you know. And it's just like, I want to look at her legs. But it's kind of that's one of my biggest complaints about the movie, is you got to kill the chick with the legs first. It's just like, or, you know, one of the first kills, and it's just like, I was looking at her legs. But that reminds me of, it's raining red. Big props if you know what movie that line's from. Feel free to leave it in the comments if you know. Many props to you in advance if you do know. But what can I say? I mean, even not being a Saw fan, this movie definitely feels like a Saw movie. And one of the extra bonuses you get, as I already said at the beginning of the review, is John Kramer is back. And as I said, I didn't know if I was going to spoil it or not, but I've decided I won't spoil it in case you haven't seen it. Even if you have, it's just less for me to talk about. The video can be shorter by me not saying it. I'll simply say, as I already said, that you know, the gimmick that they came up with to bring him back, actually, you can't argue with it. It worked. So it was kind of an interesting way to bring him back. It was cool to see him back. And I don't know, I saw something online that there could possibly be another one of these next year, and I don't know if that's true or not, if there's going to be like a Jigsaw 2 or another one of these back again or whatever. But, you know, I mean, I'm always up for, you know, as long as they're not like every other year or every year like they had been. Like the first 7, I think, was like every year. That gets to be a little much. But, you know, I can handle like a Saw movie every other year. That's really not a big issue. But you know, on the whole, you know, it wasn't a chore to get through. It definitely kept your interest. Like the game, the game / traps. Well, I think we'll just call it like the game. The game, you know, John's game or whatever, definitely kept your interest as the people, you know, were being picked off one by one and losing you know, in their traps or whatever, and being picked off. And one thing I will say in closing is that the laser bit at the end of the movie, I'll just simply say that there's this kind of trap, game/trap thing at the very end of the movie that involves these flesh, flesh and bone cutting lasers that just slice right through flesh and bone like butter. And there's this awesome trap where he's got one guy's chained up over here with one around his neck, and he had all these lasers that go around his neck, and the other guy over here, and these lasers come on, and then they all of them kind of go further and further in to just slice up the head, when you take an apple cutter and go from the top of the apple, and it slices it into slices and stuff. That's like the ultimate all-time, the last death by trap at the end of this movie, where I know it's bright. Better bright than dark, I always say, where a guy's head gets just sliced in pieces like an apple, slicer or whatever. So that was cool, and actually I really liked how the lasers actually looked in the movie too. They just looked, I don't know, they looked like real lasers. They looked cool. So what can I say? I'm going to go 2.5 stars out of 4 stars for Jigsaw. Not even being a Saw fan, I was pleasantly surprised and definitely not disappointed with the $6 Blu-ray purchase. I saw it back then, and then obviously I rewatched it just recently, and it's definitely a movie that I've got no problem. I can see myself wanting to revisit from time to time, and definitely does what Saw used to do. I guess one of my biggest complaints, as I already said, is just the aspect ratio. Like, why you gotta go, do that wide stuff, because it's just black bars on your TV. But whatever, that's just a small complaint. But yeah, I decided to go against the just spoiling the ending route, and just, if you haven't seen it, that way you can, if you ever do see it, that way you can, experience the reveal at the end. And not be spoiled. So it would be interesting to see, like, if they do another one, like next year or whatever, what they're gonna do to make it, make it work or make it interesting. Because the more I talk about it, the more I realize, like, I think that was a thing for the end of the Saw movies, to have this reveal that made you go, whoa, like from the first one, where the guy, John Kramer was just the corpse that was sitting on the floor the whole movie. I mean, as dumb as the movies are, you gotta admit, that's a cool reveal, and I think that's something that, yeah, the more I think about it, that's what the Saw movies did at the end of the movie, when that music came up, like da-da-da, 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 da-da-da. It was like the reveal, and it's just like so intricate and so mind-blowing. It's like, whoa, and then game's over or whatever, and it's just like, so it definitely does that kind of thing. And I gotta say, I mean, not being a fan, it's just like, even if you hate a franchise, just stop making the movies for 7 years and make one again, and I guess you'll even suck in people that maybe never even liked the movies to begin with very much. So I guess that'll pretty much do it for my review of Jigsaw. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, we'll catch you on the next video.